So I've talked about rebasing to Bitcoin and just setting a exchange rate of one sat to $1. That just takes a politician, maybe it's Trump, I don't know, but somebody just to say, we'll let you redeem your debt for this. And that's it. I mean, how do you peg a dollar to gold? It's by decree. And pegging a currency to Bitcoin is the same. It just depends on the motivations and the necessity of doing so. I think when things get bad enough, every card is on the table. And we're seeing this, right? Some of those cards are bad cards. It's the rolling out of a CBDC like in Europe.
For decades, world currencies have been pegged to gold, or to one another, through political decree. The US dollar itself only gained strength and legitimacy by being tied to gold until President Nixon ended convertibility in 1971. But what if the future looks very different? What if the global economy isn't forced to rebase to gold, but to Bitcoin? Imagine a world where one Satoshi, the smallest unit of Bitcoin, is equal to $1 US. While that may sound far-fetched, it's a scenario being openly discussed by economists and Bitcoin advocates today. Here's the reasoning. When fiat currencies collapse, governments always scramble to find a new anchor to restore confidence, and with its fixed supply of 21 million coins, Bitcoin is emerging as the only contender strong enough to fill that role. Samson Mow, CEO of Jan3 and one of the leading voices on nation-state Bitcoin adoption, has argued repeatedly that dollar-sat parity is not only possible, but inevitable. He explains that if the 21 million Bitcoin in existence were evenly distributed across the globe, each person would hold about 259,000 Satoshis. But because of early adopters, long-term holders, and institutional accumulation, that's mathematically impossible. According to Mow, the realistic average is closer to 10,000 to 50,000 sats per person. That projection points toward a future where dollar-sat parity becomes the most likely outcome. And when I say parity, I mean today's dollar purchasing power. Imagine a dozen eggs costing just 2 or 3 sats. If this scenario plays out, Bitcoin's price would soar far beyond current levels, into the trillions in market capitalization, triggering a complete reordering of the global financial system. For the US, such a peg would have profound consequences. It would instantly devalue existing dollar-denominated debt, reset the credit system, and hand extraordinary purchasing power to those already holding Bitcoin. Globally, the shock would be seismic. Exporters and importers would begin pricing goods in sats rather than dollars. Countries that resisted Bitcoin adoption would be left behind, and early accumulators would gain a generational advantage. In short, it would mark one of the fastest and most dramatic monetary resets in history. This is the framework Samson Mow presents in his recent analysis, but he goes even further. He dives into the fragile state of fiat currencies, explains why the US dollar's unique digitization may delay, but not prevent its collapse, highlights the dangers of central bank digital currencies, and ultimately lays out why Bitcoin could hit $1 million far faster than most expect. In this video, we'll break down his analysis step by step. Stay tuned, and don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below as we dive into his thesis. Thanks, and enjoy the video.
There's discussion about will it be a quick transition off the dollar or a slow transition. I think it's actually going to be a quick transition because fiat currencies always die in a spectacular manner. It's just a question of when. And you also have to factor in that the US dollar is in a very unique position because it is largely digitized outside of stablecoins. Like, it is a digital thing. It's reached market penetration that no other prior reserve currency has reached, right? Like, it's sort of married itself with technology and ingrained itself in economies around the world. So it might actually take a few years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10, I don't know, but it will end, but it's taking longer than normally it would have. That a non-digital fiat currency would not have this lifespan.
Is that because we can essentially offshore some of the debasement required to keep the dollar monetary system solvent?
Yeah, well, if you look at history, like all the reserve currencies in the past were relatively centralized because they weren't digital. But But with the dollar being mostly digital, right, you can permeate every other country's financial system in some way with it. And in some way, every single other fiat currency is now linked to the dollar, right? Everything is a derivative of the dollar. If you look at the Singapore dollar, right, it's linked to the US dollar. The Hong Kong dollar is also linked in some ways to the dollar itself too. And then you have other countries that just use the dollar outright. It's reached really high levels of permeation that we haven't seen in history before. So that's why I think it's managed to hang on this long, even with the astronomical amounts of money printing. But in the words of Lynn Alden, nothing stops this train. So it's just going to keep inflating. And it's just a question of when it hyperinflates. I'm not really sure about that yet. I mean, I've heard the argument that stablecoins are extending the life of the dollar because it's helping effectively deliver the dollar to more people in the world. But I don't know. I still hold a lot of weight in the idea that fiat currencies fail spectacularly. And that's just because when people wake up, they all wake up. It's not like we'll start transitioning off the dollar and the corner store near your house is gonna keep taking the dollar and changing their prices to like $1,000 for a Kit Kat bar, right? It's just going to be a quick thing once that thing hits, and they'll just switch off and take Bitcoin because they can't afford to not take Bitcoin. They can't afford to take the dollar at some point. Germany with the mark dying, that's a good example. It happened in, a year-ish, and that was a non-digital thing. So I think it'll be faster for the dollar to fail. Bitcoin is extending it by integrating with it in some ways. It can be done, just like anything can be done, right? The only thing that can't be done is printing Bitcoin out of thin air, but anything else is possible. One sat to $1. And that just takes a politician, maybe it's Trump, I don't know, but somebody just to say, we'll let you redeem your debt or this. And that's it. I mean, how do you peg a dollar to gold? It's by decree. And pegging currency to Bitcoin is the same. It just depends on the motivations and the necessity of doing so. I think when things get bad enough, every card is on the table. And we're seeing this, right? Some of those cards are bad cards. It's the rolling out of a CBDC like in Europe, starting to control the internet like in the UK. There are things that are happening, and you can see these things happening are a direct response to other things that they're trying to mitigate or distract you from. So there are a lot of, just take the UK as an example, there are a lot of societal problems. And now they're focusing on this one particular thing, which doesn't do anything for the other problems, but it definitely distracts and gets people enraged. But it just goes to show, like, every card is on the table now. But that rebasing the Bitcoin card is also, to be ready, is to be in Bitcoin.
Samson Mow's framing is crucial because right now, every card is on the table. When governments face mounting economic stress, their default move is almost always the same: more control. Whether it's central bank digital currencies or tighter internet regulations, these measures concentrate power in the hands of the state without actually solving the structural weaknesses underneath. We're already seeing this play out. Europe is rolling out CBDCs. The UK is pushing deeper into digital surveillance. On the surface, these look like solutions, but in reality, they're just short-term patches designed to hide deeper fiscal decay. And history shows us something important. Centralized stopgaps never reverse currency debasement. That's where alternatives like Bitcoin and, to a lesser extent, gold come in. They serve as escape valves, allowing individuals and institutions to shield their wealth from the relentless erosion of fiat money. Crypto infrastructure through stablecoins has temporarily extended the dollar's life. But as Mao points out, this doesn't stop the inevitable collapse, it only delays it. And when that breaking point arrives, the transition won't be slow or gradual. It will be instant. Store owners, banks, even sovereign nations will flip their accounting systems overnight, abandoning the dollar once it becomes too weak to use. This is where Mo's bold prediction of Bitcoin hitting $1 million suddenly makes sense. Because in his view, once people wake up to the reality of fiat collapse, they won't wake up one by one. They'll wake up all at once.
So were you surprised when he signed the SBR into effect?
Yes and no. I think for him, it was a low-hanging fruit that he could just do something and say promises made, promises kept, right? It didn't cost him anything. It was within his power to do so with executive order. And he paved the way for non-budget neutral acquisition. And I think that's all powerful stuff. I think what is lacking now, and many Bitcoiners are seeing this, is execution on that front. Like, where is the audit of Fort Knox? Where is the tally of all the Bitcoin held by the government? And I think we're still waiting for that. And where is the next phase in the SBR? Like, when are you going to put up a website and accumulate? So I think we should all be holding them accountable, but we should also be fair in understanding that governments are not exactly the most efficient, well-oiled machines out there. So maybe they'll get to it. And I'm more of a glass half full kind of guy, so I think they'll get to it, but we'll see. But I'm hopeful that they do execute on the SBR. But to answer your question, I think it's kind of expected. It was low-hanging fruit enough that he could do that, get a PR win, and get his donors happy. And then the rest is up to David Sachs and everyone else to execute on that. Well, it's also a tool. So for Gen3, we like to work on nation-state adoption, so we can go to other countries and say, hey, look at the SBR. And they're not going to ask, like, did they do anything? And we're not going to tell them that, but we'll say, hey, did that. So why don't you do that too? And if you get enough people doing that, passing legislation, creating things like a framework for an SBR, eventually one of them is going to execute on that. I don't think it's possible. It's hard for any government to do stuff in secret. Well, things that are beneficial for the country, it's hard for them to do it in secret. Other things, it's much easier. Like, you could do a lot of things in secret, but for something like Bitcoin, like an asset, it would be like saying, can you buy gold in secret? It's probably hard. You need to, because it's part of the financial system and you have to be all above board, right? Like, where did you buy from? How is it custodied? There's a ton of questions that have to be answered. Like, it can't just be Trump directing someone in some agency to buy and send it to his Blockstream Jade wallet on his desk, right? There's got to be more controls and process in place for something like that. So I think it's really hard for a country to sneakily buy Bitcoin, even though they should. But I think it's hard. Just like it's hard for them to get to the point where they can't even buy, right? Like the city of Vancouver, Mayor Ken Sim has said that he wants the city to buy Bitcoin for its treasury, for its reserves. But he's said like there's 2 years of red tape he's got to go through to even get to that point. Yeah, the answer is they could do it in theory, but in reality, they probably need to go through and cross the T's and dot the I's before they can really buy Bitcoin.
In order for us to rip to 1M, do you know what kind of tsunami of capital would need to come in during what kind of duration of time? Because I feel like there's a lot of capital that could come into Bitcoin pretty quickly. Do you have any estimates around that?
Hard to say. I think we should have been here already. So I would have thought that the ETFs opening the floodgates combined with strategy would have gotten us there already. And this is why I'm one of the believers that there is paper Bitcoin out there dampening the market. So we'll see. But, nothing stops the train. It's going to go. The dollar is going to keep on inflating and Bitcoin is going to keep going up. It's just a question of when it all converges. The 80,000 coins that were market sold is a good indicator that the market doesn't care about anything now. Like, there's just too much power behind accumulation, whether it's strategy or other Bitcoin treasury companies or hodlers or ETF buyers too. There's just a massive amount of insatiable demand, and the demand is only going to go up.
At first glance, the idea of dollar sat parity might sound outrageous. But when you look at the math, the history of fiat currency collapses, and the sheer scale of today's money printing, it starts to feel less like a question of if and more like when. The US dollar has held on longer than most because of its deep digital penetration into global finance. But as Samson Mow emphasizes, that advantage only stretches the timeline. It doesn't change the destination. History gives us no example where unlimited debt expansion and endless currency debasement end smoothly. They end suddenly. They end spectacularly. Now imagine this. If one Satoshi, the smallest unit of Bitcoin, were to equal $1 in purchasing power, the global implications would be staggering. Bitcoin's market value would surge into the hundreds of trillions. Wealth would be redistributed on a scale humanity has never seen, and nations themselves would be forced to compete for Bitcoin reserves just to maintain relevance. For the average person, Holding even a modest amount today, tens of thousands of SATs, could translate into generational wealth tomorrow. But the window to accumulate is shrinking fast. Mow's perspective also exposes a critical contrast. While governments experiment with CBDCs and tighten their grip on monetary systems, individuals can quietly opt out. Bitcoin isn't just a hedge anymore. It's a parallel system, fully prepared to absorb the capital flight from fiat. Whether through an official peg, a hyperinflationary collapse, or a simple recognition of Bitcoin's superiority by the market, the trajectory all points in one direction, toward a SAT-based global economy. So, the takeaway is clear: dollar sat. Parity isn't a far-fetched fantasy. It's a possible, maybe even likely outcome of the forces already in motion. The real question is, are you prepared for that transition? If Samson Mow is right, the smartest move is simple: be in Bitcoin. And now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe a SAT dollar peg is inevitable, or will governments find a way out? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this breakdown valuable, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss more expert insights.